What is up? Welcome to Pistons Talk Podcast. Hope you guys are having a great Thursday night. In today's episode, what we'll be discussing, got a ClutchPoints.com article from their head national reporter, Brett Siegel. This is more of a Giannis and LeBron thing, but there was a Jaden Ivey mention that we'll be going over. And we also have some training camp signees from the Detroit Pistons today. Now, some of these guys their names may be familiar to you. We'll be going over their names, talking about them a little bit. If you guys are interested in the training camp guys, definitely tune in. For the duration of this episode, we'll kind of be going over them a little bit, where they've played, what to expect out of them, and, maybe some possible battles that they could challenge with some cruise guys, or even possible two-way guys on this team. But let's get into today's episode. Let's start with the ClutchPoints.com article and the mention of Jaden Ivey. So the mention of Jaden Ivey in this Clutch Points article is more focusing on possible, front office rivals and them trying to get a grasp on the situation. So this is what it says. If you're an audio listener, I'm going to read this part of the article. And it says, Ivey's situation with the Pistons is unique. Despite internal confidence existing and the Pistons continuing to shut down speculation of Ivey being on the trade block, sources outside the organization have described the fourth-year guard's status, quote, open for interpretation. With Ivey injured, the Pistons went on to make the playoffs and saw key contributors from others like Asar Thompson, Ron Holland II. Now that they signed Karis LeVert and Duncan Robinson in free agency, has Ivey become more expendable in Detroit? If the organization does look to make a move involving Ivey, it would be one that is sustainably increases their chances of competing for a title in the East. The Pistons have not offered Ivey to any team, nor are they entering the season with the mindset of trading him. They also go on to say his situation is worth keeping an eye on in Detroit, especially if an extension isn't agreed to before the season begins. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack with this quote, okay? So one of the first things that really grabbed my attention from the short quote from Brett Siegel at Clutch Points is a few things. I think first and foremost right here, it says, quote, open for interpretation. Okay. Now, since Trajan Langdon has arrived in Detroit, he has spoke very highly of Jaden Ivey. And you have to remember, that was a Troy Weaver draft pick. That was a previous regime's draft selection. Trajan has spoke very highly of Jaden Ivey. He had mentioned at his end of the season presser that, he was starting to, put it all together and had a really good season in 30 games, right? Now, the organization has shut down speculation of Ivey being on the trade block, but others, around the NBA think that the Pistons would possibly move on from him, if the price was right. Now, what is the price? I don't know. I don't really think the Pistons are openly shopping Jaden Ivey. If an offer came on the table that was too good to refuse, most GMs, most presidents would probably make that deal. We just don't know what his trade market is. I think right now it's probably at his lowest point because he only played 30 games. And the perception is the Pistons played better when Jaden Ivey was hurt. But that's the second part of this quote I want to get into, okay? Because it does mention with Ivey injured, the Pistons went on to make the playoffs. Here's the one thing that maybe outsiders trying to look in, maybe they weren't tuning into every Detroit Pistons game like we were. Maybe they weren't locked in like we were. Asar Thompson didn't get his minute restriction lifted until after Jaden Ivey got injured against the Orlando Magic. So you can have assumptions, you can have opinions that the Pistons, automatically, played better without Jaden Ivey. When Asar Thompson came back and his minutes restriction was lifted, the Pistons became a middle of the pack defensive team to top 10. Some months they were in the top 5 with OKC, right? We never really got to see Jaden Ivey and Asar Thompson on the floor together consistently. I think if you combined all the minutes with Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson, and Jaden Ivey, they played a whopping 5 minutes last year together. Now, I'm not attacking Brett. This is more of, rival executives across the NBA saying that, the Pistons went on a run. They made the playoffs. Jaden Ivey wasn't out there. They had Tim Hardaway Jr. in the starting lineup. They had Malik Beasley carrying that team. They added Dennis Schroeder. Maybe Ivey is expendable. I think that kind of notion is nonsense because I really felt Jaden Ivey was actually turning a corner. I thought he was starting to put it all together. If you look at his stats, last 10, 15 games of the season, he was putting up close to 20 point per game numbers next to Cade Cunningham. His just stats off the catch were really eye-opening. I mean, shooting 40% from 3 and 5 attempts a game is great. I don't know if he can replicate it again going into this season, but I did want to touch on, this is part of the article kind of mentioning that, they added Karis LeVert, they signed Duncan Robinson, maybe he could be expendable. And the last part of this is kind of just common sense. If the organization does look to make a move involving Ivy, it would be one that substantially increases their chances for competing a title. That's just common sense, right? If you're going to trade one of these core pieces, you obviously would want it to, kind of propel you up the Eastern Conference standings with the Clevelands, with the New Yorks, with Orlando's to kind of, put yourself in the conversation as who's going to come out the East. Is Detroit going to make the Eastern Conference Finals? Those are the type of conversations people would have, hypothetically, if you were to trade a core guy like Jaden Ivey. But I did want to kind of touch on this for a couple of minutes. I know there have been a lot of people discussing this, if there's anything to really take out of it. Me personally, it's just outsiders trying to look in. If you look at what happened last season with the Detroit Pistons, if you add context to the situation, Asar was still on a minute restriction. He wasn't able to, play the full 25, 30 minutes a game while Jaden Ivey was healthy. Jaden Ivey, after he came back from a toe injury on that West Coast trip against the Phoenix Suns, played really well. Even in the game that he did get injured against the Magic, he was playing really well. So I think a lot of this is, BS to me personally. I think it's just outsiders trying to look in and their perspective of the Detroit Pistons. And there's a lot of extensions on the table that haven't been signed yet. I shouldn't say extensions on the table that haven't signed because they're extension eligible. Ivy could sign within the next couple of weeks, but the Pistons could wait it out and just let him hit restricted free agency and decide to sign him next summer. So it's not really a red flag the way that people are, trying to wave it. You have Jalen Duren, you have Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson is extension eligible the following summer, next summer. So I don't really, take too much into this reporting from, rival executives across the league. All right, let's kind of transition over to the Detroit Pistons and their training camp deals that they made today. So they signed a total of 4 guys. Some of these guys you might recognize. They were on the Detroit Pistons Summer League roster. But Keith Smith tweeted out today that the Detroit Pistons have signed Charles Bediako. I think I pronounced that last name right. Dawson Garcia, he was on the Pistons Summer League team. Gian Ukamandu, he was also on the Detroit Pistons Summer League team. And Bryce Williams, another guy that was on the Detroit Pistons Summer League team. Now, I do want to go over a couple of these guys. Like I mentioned, if this is a part of the podcast you guys just aren't interested in, I get it. Some of these guys are going to be playing in the Motor City Cruise. If I had to bet on it, I think a lot of these guys could be big-time contributors for the Cruise this upcoming season. But if you're not interested in it, I get it. But if you guys are, you're curious about these players, we're going to be going over it. So let's go over the first player that the Pistons signed. So that would be Charles Bediako. 3 days ago, the Motor City Cruise, the Detroit Pistons G League affiliate, decided to trade for Charles from the Grand Rapids Gold, who, funny enough, was actually the Detroit Pistons' old G League affiliate team. They're now affiliated with the Denver Nuggets. But when I looked at this trade immediately, I was like, okay, who are the two-way contracts with the Detroit Pistons? Because Charles is a very good player. He's a big. And I saw Tolu Smith was a two-way player this year. He was a two-way player the later half of last season for the Pistons and the Crews. I think Charles is a depth piece for the Motor City Crews. I think Tolu would probably still start for the Crews and have an opportunity to spend time with the Detroit Pistons. Charles, to me, has a very good opportunity to have a good training camp, impress, and, you know, to get a backup center spot behind Tolu and maybe possibly, you know, push Tolu to a starting center for the Crews. Don't know if he is ready for NBA minutes right now. I think he's very talented. There's a lot of skill there. Went to Alabama before getting, traded to the Grand Rapids Gold. He was with the San Antonio Spurs organization and their G League affiliate with the Austin Spurs. But I'm very intrigued to see what he does in training camp and especially in preseason games. He has shown flashes to protect the rim, can set really good picks, really good screens, roll to the basket. Just, you know, typical big man stuff. So he is a center. If you guys want to, you know, kind of turn on the tape with him. Very interesting trade by the Motor City Crews. They gave up quite a lot to acquire this guy, so obviously their front office sees a lot in him, and maybe they see the potential of him, you know, possibly being a starting center for them or possibly being a future two-way contract player with the Detroit Pistons. So let's go over to the second player that was signed today on a training camp deal, Dawson Garcia. That name does sound familiar. He went to Minnesota. The Pistons did sign him to the Summer League roster. Did get some pretty decent clock with the Summer League team. He's a stretch 4, power forward, went to Minnesota, can hit three-point shots, can bang down low in the post, pretty strong rebounder, plays power forward. I'm not going to sit up here and say this is the savior to the backup 4. I'm just not, you guys. I understand that we have one roster spot available, and Tobias Harris is our starting power forward, and we don't really have a backup for right now. I think some people have assumed it could be Asar, Bobby Klitman. Don't really know if he's going to be the backup for. I think he would have to have a very strong training camp and preseason games for me to come up here and say Bobby Klitman's going to be backing up Tobias Harris. I think Dawson Garcia and Bobby Klitman will be going at it during training camp and preseason. I mean, that's why you sign these training camp guys, is they're just bodies to help you get ready for the upcoming season. But keep an eye out on Dawson Garcia if he does get some clock in these preseason games. Maybe he does, you know, flash that three-point shot. Maybe he flashes the rebounding and being able to play out of the post. The second guy, honestly, like, anytime I see his name, like, I just kind of smile because, like, John Yu was a Motor City Crews walk-on, okay? So he tried out for the team, gave the Detroit Pistons, the Motor City Crews, $200 to just try out for the team. Funny enough, he made the team and was one of their better contributors last year. Very bouncy, athletic wing player. Just plays it just 120% every minute he's out there. I think he's a fun story. I think he'll be a guy that a lot of Pistons fans will definitely like to watch. He can hit three-point shots, can defend. His dunk package, I think, is very impressive. I caught a couple of Crews games this past season, was really impressed with him, of just kind of being that energizer for them this season. But I think John Yee will definitely be a fun story for the broadcast during preseason. And, you know, maybe he does get a two-way from another NBA team, because the kid is just so talented and athletic. Last guy on this list, Bryce Williams. He was another guy that was on the Pistons Summer League team. So was John Yee, by the way. I forgot to mention that. But Bryce Williams, he was a guy that I thought was going to get a little bit more clock during the Summer League, and he really didn't. But the Summer League roster was kind of deep. The depth that they had was actually kind of crazy, but scored a lot in college, scored all three levels, can pass a little bit. I like him as a player. He can play between shooting guard, small forward. This team is so deep at shooting guard right now. And there's still ongoing talks about what's going to happen with Malik Beasley, pending this investigation with the NBA and the district attorney of New York. There's not a whole lot of minutes at the shooting guard spot. Even small forward, it's pretty deep. I mean, you got Ron Holland, you got Sar Thompson. You could switch Duncan Robinson over to the small forward. I don't really know if Bryce Williams will get too much playing time at all. I mean, he even drafted Jazz Lanier. I mean, I'm sure Jazz Lanier will probably get priority over a guy like Bryce Williams to play in the preseason because the Pistons want to see what he can offer. But in any event, Bryce Williams could be a good depth piece for the Motor City Cruise. Very talented player. Very talented player. All these guys are very talented, and it's kind of weird. I'm still kind of getting used to having a front office and an organization that when we sign these two-way training camp are just, summer league guys, like these guys actually, they can hoop. In years past, I mean, we've signed guys that were like, who? Like this guy can't even, hack it in the G League. I think all of these players that the Pistons are inviting to training camp at the bare minimum are probably first, second options on G League teams. So it'll be really interesting to see how these guys do progress and play. I know there was a little bit of news with John Yu that Keith did mention that they did actually have to waive him so he could be a part of the Motor City Cruise roster for the remainder of this season coming up, but don't really know if he's going to be playing, with the Pistons on a training camp deal. I don't really think a training camp deal would offset a G League contract, but I could be wrong there. Don't quote me on that. But they kind of want to go over just all the guys that the Pistons did sign in training camp. I'm going to have to make a depth chart, an updated depth chart of everybody that the Pistons have signed under contracts. Maybe we'll make a podcast and a video about that next week. We will be seeing you guys on Sunday. We are going to be having Czar. We have not had Czar on the podcast, I think, since April. Really excited to have a conversation with him. Should just be a lighthearted, fun, just chill podcast for you guys on Sunday. But that's all for today's episode. Again, let me know what you guys think of this Jaden Ivey piece. And also, if you did happen to watch the entirety or listen to the podcast with these training camp deals, which one of these players are you excited for? Which one of these players are you intrigued by, or maybe you just don't know a whole lot about? Let me know down below in the comment section wherever you're watching, whether this is on YouTube, you're watching there right now, or maybe you're listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever you do get your podcast. Leave us a comment and we'll try to get back to you. But until next time, you guys, have a great night. And as always, go Pistons. Peace.